But Sabbath was made for man, not man made for Sabbath. Meaning it's a gift. It's not a yoke, and it's not a backbreaker. What do we say, family? Welcome to Simplexity, little podcast. We take seemingly complex matters and attempt to make them plain and simple. My name's Sammy Foster, joined with Boots.
How you doing?
I'm doing it. I'm really doing this thing.
It's a good shirt today.
Marshall's.
Ooh.
Yeah, Marshall's has some good finds lately. It's either feast or famine. I've been feasting. And I'm a clearance rack guy. Love hanging out on the clearance rack. Actually, I got quite the bounty that I'm getting ready to bring in for all of my my co-laborers.
Oh.
Yeah, I got a good
Sammy
bag full.
Downs.
And
Yes.
and I just brought in a pretty big.
You did. You
Brought
have
some
anything at home?
suits, brought some tuxedos, brought shoes. Oh yeah. Those that are blessed are called to be a blessing.
That's true. Yeah.
I want to be a blessing.
Sometimes it's either I can't pull off what you bring in, or, like the size, it's just not the right fit.
Right. Yeah.
But you do bring in nice stuff. I'm always appreciative for the opportunity.
You know what? See, that comes from a really pure guy. Even though you're not a partaker, you're an appreciator. And I appreciate that about you.
Thank you.
I have been, as of late, I've been watching my size increase.
Really?
Yeah. Got quite the belly. And I'm really not looking to get rid of it.
No. It's a rite of
That's what they have
passage.
bigger sizes for. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's just funny because
Don't go downhill.
Yeah.
when you walk up to somebody who has a bigger belly and you're like, man, you haven't missed a meal in a while, huh? And I'm always like, whoa.
You smack it.
Yeah, you slap the belly. Okay. Before this gets any weirder,
Okay.
I had to pull the plug on that one.
Sorry.
So a few days ago, that was yesterday, I guess, we were chatting about just upcoming conversations and topics that we're going to potentially delve into.
Yeah.
And
Many of which have come in at the request of viewers, listeners. Yeah.
Yeah. If you requested this one on Sabbath, let us know. This one's for you. But I was intrigued the way that you kind of launched into this potential idea of talking about it, because you were like, I would like to talk about Sabbath because there's parts about it that just the way it's perceived can kind of, I don't know if you used the word irritate. Did you?
I did.
You did. Okay.
I did.
Well, I have absolutely no idea what aspect of it or the way that it's perceived would elicit that response from you. But I know that Sabbath is a large conversation. It's obviously something that John is passionate about, and he's talked about it at length at Lighthouse.
Totally.
You mentioned John Mark Comer earlier.
Yeah.
Kind of the way of Jesus, like the spiritual disciplines and the practices, and Sabbath is definitely a emphasized one in that kind of, not sect, but group. So I don't know where does
ticks you off?
Yeah, no, not what ticks you off, but where does your head go, and what kind of prompts that? Oh, I want to unpack this for people.
I think when I made my statement the other day, and you were like, "Whoa, that's coming from a deep well over there." What is the problem? I think it's more an issue. It's definitely an issue with me that I cop an attitude when I hear people speak of Sabbath, because I feel like it largely, and I'm probably being way oversimplistic, and I'm probably broad brushing to an unfair degree. It's just been my experience, Boots, that when Sabbath is communicated, it feels far too often that it's coming from either the personality of somebody that's really granola and like really that they Sabbath all the time.
Okay. So that was my theory. My theory was that it was a frustration because you're the work guy.
Yeah,
You're
yeah, but I love Sabbath.
Yeah.
I just don't like the rep that Sabbath has got. I don't like those that rep it. I don't like the personality that it's constantly couched in. Does that make sense?
Do you think we over spiritualize it? Is that what you're saying?
I think we over spiritualize it. I think we over mechanicize it.
Oh.
I think sometimes it's just left in a dull light, and I don't like that. Meaning, sometimes Sabbath is sort of like, it's projected upon those that are like, either they, in my mind's eye, this is so wrong because I'm stereotyping and it's a me issue. But nevertheless, I'd like to hit this and then move off quickly. In my mind's eye, it always gets polarized and it falls in the camp of two different types of people. One being like a hippie, that their whole life is a Shabbat. Like they need to go to work, or the very disciplined, sort of methodical, rigid type guy where Sabbath is to a degree of work. And I don't think when I reconcile in Scripture and I listen to the heart of God that gifted us Sabbath, not just from the jump, not just in Genesis, we see God actually walk in it and practice it. Mm-hmm. Then we see it within the law, the Mosaic law, that God told him, tell my children, I want you to keep this. Then you see Jesus said Sabbath was created for man and not man for Sabbath, essentially saying it's a gift. It's a gift, and it's the rhythm of life that makes you full. And I like that. And so Sabbath is going to come in a lot of different shapes and sizes, all rooted in the same importance and meaning. It's just sometimes it grates how it's been branded.
Okay, so let me...
Go
what
ahead.
I'm hearing is, let me practice some Imago Dei.
Some active listening.
Yeah. What I'm hearing is you are frustrated when it falls in one of two categories, which it primarily does, in your opinion. Either one, the kind of over-spiritualized, almost excuse for inactivity toward people who perhaps have a tendency toward inactivity in and of themselves. Or it's almost put in the category of like, I don't know why I think about this, but like the rigid, disciplined nature of, well, I got to do my ice bath every morning, Yes. I've got to do 15 minutes of this or
totally. The Andrew
I've
Huberman.
got to do my, the Andrew Huberman of Sabbath. Well, every on the seventh day, I will not do this, I will not do that. Like,
right.
To a perhaps legalistic, overly smothering, again, not a gift, but like a work to follow it in and of itself.
Totally. And be the fact that we have the conversation around Sabbath of that many will propose. How do we not become legalistic with Sabbath? That, I believe, is a telltale that we misunderstand Sabbath.
Okay. So what does Sabbath actually mean then?
Yeah, wonderful. So Sabbath actually in Hebrew, it's the word is Shabbat. It means simply to cease. It means to cease from productivity. It means to cease from striving. It means to cease from breaking a sweat, to toil the ground, to steward, to create. It means to cease from that which we would deem work. I think one of the ways that we keep Sabbath from becoming legalistic is that we let it breathe a little bit without being too rigid in how we define work versus pleasure. So here's what I mean by that. When God instituted the Sabbath, he meant specifically we were to cease. You work 6 days and you can go bell to bell if you want. Toil the soil, create the harvest, sow the seed, work your land, nurture your family, weave your clothes, do what you got to do. On the seventh day, cease. The why behind the what actually is incredible, because God knowing, him being the creator, we being the creation, God knowing what that gives to our life and what that actually stirs in our heart and posture makes abundance. It makes life full. And it kicks us out of rhythm of just nose to the grindstone, create. He is totally sort of, it was the stopgap between the out hustle, out grind, out work. And it was the posture creator that was the reminder of, oh, I look to the hills from where my help comes from. My help comes from God, the giver of all good and perfect gifts. So really, when you consider Shabbat in the Old Testament, God provided that for man. You work 6 days, you Sabbath on the seventh. It was really to provide four things. Okay. Four things by way of mentality and practice. The first is it provided worship and remembrance. This is where you just stopped. This is where you stop. This is why we celebrate Sunday as our Sabbath. We can get into that in a moment if you'd like as to why it's not Saturday. But Sunday as our Sabbath is a day of collective and communal worship and adoration and remembering what God has already done for you. If God's goodness is linked to the past, as it is, there is a lot to remember and a lot to worship for. He wanted a day set aside for him. Not for, oh, now just rest and relax and do kids' sports. He said it. Not just do kids' sports, not be sort of running to and fro all over the county, making your kids your God and all of that. The Sabbath day was a day of where worship would be an expression, adoration would be a practice, and remembrance would be contemplation. You'd remember. And you know what's really beautiful? Is you can remember the past week.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Just remember the 6 days previous to the one that you're worshiping and identify why, because we're so stubborn and short-sighted, if you're anything like me. God's handiwork was woven all through my Monday. And he was certainly present on my Wednesday and Tuesday, and he showed up powerfully on Thursday. The question is, am I a petulant child that just wants more and more and more and more and more? Or will I stop, worship him, and remember all of his handiwork and evidences of grace that have been the previous 6 days? He gave that to people so that they would stop to do just that.
Yeah, and I like what you said about, you took a shot at the kids' sports thing.
Right.
But, it's not just ceasing from the normal work to replace it with a different work.
Yes.
Or chore day. Well, it could be, I suppose. Yeah. But the emphasis being, let this be primarily focused on remembering, adoring, worshiping, and ceasing from the work of the previous week.
Absolutely. Which speaks to the second thing. And that is, it's not just worship and remembrance, but the second thing is liberation. In Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 15, God said, really commending the Sabbath, but also reminding the people, he said to them, remember the slavery that you were once under. I wanted to read it to you. I had it. Remember that you were once slaves in Egypt, and that the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Meaning that we're no longer slaves. Now, the Apostle Paul would certainly write to the New Testament church, and he would define himself as a slave. I like that. I'm a bondservant as unto the Lord. I'm a slave of the King. That was Paul's just putting everything in its rightful order. But the Sabbath reminds us we're not enslaved any longer. We're under the king's jurisdiction and his lordship, which is the inheritance of goodness. So you work 6 days and then you honor the king. You remember he's the liberator of your soul. He's the one that broke the yoke and the bondage of sin and death. He's the one that brought you up out of the oppression and the bondage of Egypt. And now you're his, who's the Father of heavenly lights that loves to give good and perfect gifts to his kids. And so he's so good and so liberating that he said, one day, just remember me. And cease from the work and toil, and watch how I bless you as you honor me. Enjoy those babies. Enjoy those kids. Doesn't mean make them idols. Doesn't mean that you make everything about them. But make sure that you enjoy them. Enjoy good food. Enjoy good time. Enjoy. The Jews are prone to get legalistic. The Jews are prone to totally misconstrued Shabbat. I remember years ago how legalistic Jews get. I was in Israel. I'm in Jerusalem. Did I tell you? You know where I'm going with this?
No.
Oh, you're just shaking your head like you did.
I knew that you have been to Israel, and
so I'm in Israel. I'm staying at a hotel in Jerusalem, and we get on the elevator. I'm actually standing there with a bunch of Hasidic Jews. So, I mean, these were Jews. And I'm Jewish, just a little FYI. So I'm Jewish, but I'm standing there. I'm getting ready to change. I'm going to the Wailing Wall. Shabbat, sun had set. So Shabbat had commenced. I'm standing on the elevator. Not a single one of them would hit the button. I needed to go to the 7th floor. They all needed to go to different floors. None of them would hit that button. Why? That was work.
So they were waiting for you to do it?
Yeah, so they're looking at me like, hey, you're the schmuck.
Yeah.
You go ahead and you hit the button.
You sin.
And sure enough, I had to. I was like, so I'm doing like a, hey, where's everybody going? True story. And they were like 9, 6. You know, I was like, well, I got you. I'm my brother's keeper.
Yeah.
Yep. So they go to that degree. So when it's liberation, it's a remembrance and a worship for what God has done. Then it leads to the third.
Let me just
Go
add
ahead.
to that real quick. I like how that's, the first one's almost like reflecting on the previous week, but then this is, remember how far I've taken you.
Amen.
Like, remember your salvation history almost.
Absolutely.
So it's a short-term reflection in addition to a long-term reflection as well.
Totally.
That's all I had. Go ahead. Why do you know that wasn't much?
And I think it's really important that we understand the why behind Sabbath, because it makes it full and it makes it really, you're able to cherish it for what it was and what it was intended. So when you realize that it was full of remembrance and worship, and when it was for the point of liberation, thirdly, it was for justice and equality, meaning that it wasn't just the upper strata that got to Sabbath, it was even the bondservants and the slaves. Everyone throughout Israel, and the animals, everybody got to cease. Why? Because that was the rhythm of God given as a gift to man to say, keep this day holy, set apart, sanctioned for me, for the renewal of your soul and your body as you worship the King that's nothing but good to you. Mm-hmm. It's so good. So Sabbath is really about resting and remembering and reflecting and renewing, all rooted in He's that good and He's that thoughtful. Mm-hmm. That He said, I'm not just going to put you on autopilot, wind you up, and let you run. I'm gonna put a stopgap in there so that you cease, so that you're more contemplative and reminding of who I am and that you're mine.
Mm-hmm. So before we get to point 4, I feel like, for my own curiosity, like, What about the apparent discrepancy in treatment of the Sabbath, like in the Old Testament versus New Testament versus now? Like, you describe the Jews currently who won't hit an elevator button, but, you do see throughout the Old Testament, like, pretty severe repercussions to people who are working during the Sabbath or, carrying sticks, and they get, in a lot of trouble for that. Totally. Why does it seem different now?
Well, I think the Sabbath of the Old Testament was the law.
Okay.
It was the law, and so it was the law without grace. It was the law that essentially was the tutor to show, you can't keep this. You can't uphold my standard, and you can't even take a gift and cherish it for what it was intended without distorting it or breaking it or not heeding to it. All of the law was the tutor that led us to the foot of the cross and made us mindful. We can't do it. We mess it up. And in the Old Testament, punitive punishment would come as a result of not breaking the law. In the New Testament, Jesus actually refines, and I believe that would be the best word used for it rather than redefining. Mm-hmm. He refines Sabbath and said, Sabbath, it's still what I want you to hold to.
Yeah.
But Sabbath was made for man, not man made for Sabbath. Mm-hmm. Meaning it's a gift. It's not a yoke, and it's not a backbreaker. Sabbath is made for your flourishment and for my honor. Because really the fourth, and I know you Sabbath teaches us to trust in God. And we need that. We're kids. We need a reminder, because our proclivity is to think, much like every other fast food chain out there, Beck, do me a favor. Mm-hmm. While I'm doing this, can you run me a stat check on the profitability of Chick-fil-A? Come on, somebody. Versus other fast food chains. So Truett Cathy, this is why he stopped. This is why Chick-fil-A is not open on Sunday, because of his practice of trusting God for provision when the magnetic pull is to trust in yourself and work. And so this is really the principle of tithing.
Yep.
See if I do not bless your 90% far more than you get blessed yourself by keeping 100%.
Yep.
Test me and try me. This is Malachi. See if I don't open up the windows of heaven and pour out my blessing on you. The same principle applies to Sabbath. See, test me, try me. If you don't cease from your work when you think, I could be making money, I could be redeeming time, I could be getting things done, see if I don't give you more than enough to accomplish that which you desire by you honoring me and trusting me than you keeping it all for yourself. Mm-hmm. It is a matter of applying works to your faith. For you to cease.
Yeah, it's a trust.
It's a trust. You got any numbers for me?
Yeah, so in 2023, Chick-fil-A made $9.3 million, which is higher than McDonald's and Taco Bell. McDonald's was $4 million, Taco Bell was $2 million. And they're closed one last day. Like, it's crazy.
Pretty.
Yes.
What was the question?
He said, is that per store? Because they make like $9 billion a year.
Yeah, I was like, that seems a little light, actually.
Right.
Per store, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But to your point, in working out their trust of, we're going to do 6 days, and that's all we need because we're going to rest on the seventh. God blessed that, and it's actually even more productive than the 7-day chains. Totally.
Okay. Yeah. So I just think it's God's the giver of life. And I think if we do it according to his terms, we find life and life to the full. This is John 10:10. He said, I've come that you may have life and have it to the full. The enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. To the degree that we keep to God's rhythm and his precepts, I believe we bring it out for all it's worth. Yep. I think to the degree that we buy and drink our own Kool-Aid and think we know how to do best, I think we break it, and we break it bad. Yeah. Sabbath was really a gift of God that helped us see the justice of God, the equality of his love for us. He's no respecter of persons, and he has no favorites. His love is poured out on the just and the unjust. I think it's also a trust that he wants us to demonstrate by works and action. I think it's a time of remembrance and worship, and I think it's a contemplation of what we've been liberated from. Mm-hmm. He doesn't work us into the ground and then say, you're on your own. Mm-hmm. He says, I'll be your provision if you'll trust me. Yep. Trust me by keeping my decrees.
Yep.
So
why the switch from Saturday to Sunday?
Because simply put, it's not even that complicated. It's because Jesus rose on a Sunday.
Because everything changed when Jesus came back from the dead.
Totally. So when Jesus walked out of that borrowed tomb on that Sunday morning, the church decided, New Testament church that is, they decided this is a good day to meet.
Exactly.
To commemorate.
Yeah.
So I know the Seventh-day Adventists take issue with that. Hey, I'm following the New Testament church.
Yeah.
They met on a Sunday. Sunday's good for me. And it works out for my calendar.
Yeah. Okay. Here's a question for you as a pastor.
Okay.
Obviously, you and I are both employed here at Lighthouse.
Yes.
So we technically work on Sundays.
Totally.
Is it about the day of the week itself?
That's good.
Is it about, obviously other people work on Sundays that are Christians.
Right.
They can't really do much about that. Not everybody works at Chick-fil-A, where the day is determined for them to be off.
That's exactly right.
So maybe speak to that, but also, what does it look like for you personally? As a pastor and, leading your family, what does that look like for you guys?
Totally. So to answer the question that you posed on the front end, that would be, what about those that Sunday that really doesn't work for them, to Sabbath? There's a scripture, Paul writes in Romans 14, he says, one person considers one day more sacred than another. Another considers every day alike. Each of them should be fully convinced in their own mind. Meaning, Paul's also the one that says, if you cannot do something in faith, this is as you're living as unto the Lord. If you cannot do it in faith, it's a sin unto thee. Meaning that you should be fully convinced when you take a day and you say, this is the day that I'm going to Sabbath, that before you and God, and because it is not feasible and or practical for some people not to work on Sundays. So to the point that we say we only can Sabbath on Sunday, that becomes legalistic. That wasn't God's intent. That's why Jesus said Sabbath was made for man, not man made for Sabbath. Meaning that if you choose one day, a Thursday that is, that's going to be your day to cease as unto the Lord, if you're convinced in your heart, it's good with God. So for me, obviously, pastors, preachers, Protestants, Catholics for that matter, we work on Sunday. So for me, my day is Friday. My day is Friday. So Friday for me is many times, it's a cease day. I'm not doing a lot of sermon prep. I'm eating good. I'm really slow going. It's a down gear for me. So I think that's the first thing you got to do. This is where it gets a little, some people, they don't like to cook because that's work. I'm not even debating that. They don't like to cook because that's work and that's trying to produce.
We're getting close to
I don't
pushing.
cook, but I like watching people that do. And if I did, I would.
Yeah.
that's my time, go outside. And, I neglect, in the summertime, obviously spring, fall, summer, that's my time to sort of, spruce up some things. I don't see that as work. That's cathartic for me. I like being outside in the when it's cold, not so much.
Yeah.
I do things. Ruth and I take walks. Ruth works now on Friday. She works at the school. And so, but in the morning until she does, we'll take walks, little more talking, little more reading, little more eating, little more relaxing, little more napping, things like that.
Okay.
That's a Sabbath for me.
Mm-hmm. So Ruth works on her Sabbath?
Hey, Ruth's in sin. Ruth's got a lot of sin in her life, and I'm there to pastor it.
Oh
but
my God.
Okay.
She's a stubborn congregant.
Well, I like that. I like that it's not overly structured.
Nah.
And so you're not going to like this next question for that reason. But I like to get specific sometimes. Are there any boundaries that you have instituted, like in your family, of like, we try not to do these things on Fridays, for example. Like, we try to limit X, Y, and Z, whatever that might be. Anything come to mind? And I don't want you to feel
Nope.
Nothing comes to mind.
No. I'm trying to think of let's take Sunday. This is probably a good example. Sunday after church, I will not now, because Sunday after church, when I'm done with the people of God or preaching the Word of God, I do not like to go and do work. Even like, hey, we gotta get ready for the week. I won't do that. We got to go grocery. I don't like Ruth used to like to grocery shop on a Sunday. I don't like that. I think the boundary is we should be together. And my kids are like herding kittens. So that's I try to do that, but we try to eat meals together. We try to lay around on the sofa together. We try to keep that night free from going out, but we'll be together. Those are the boundaries.
Okay. So
Grocery shopping was probably one of the ones I put the boundary to.
Okay.
Like, let's not work on Sunday. Let's just.
So you have 2 Sabbaths.
That's your pastor, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, because because Sunday is Ruth's Sabbath.
Oh, okay.
You
Gotcha.
see what I did there?
Double dipping. This will be our last question before we wrap here.
All right.
And you may have touched on aspects of this, but what do you believe is the biggest misunderstanding people have about Sabbath?
Well, yeah. Well, one, I think sometimes when it comes to Sabbath, people can't get out of their own way, and I get it because I'm a people and I can't get out of my own way. You gotta know, and then we've talked about this, and to nauseum. The pace and rate in which we live in is unsustainable. Nobody can keep up with this. At no point in the history of mankind has anybody moved according to the velocity of the Western world. And Europe is different. If you go to Italy or you go to even Great Britain, it's not as intense. And I'm looking at Beck because Beck studied abroad, but you were in London. We've compared notes.
Totally. Like, even when I went to go to a restaurant and they were like, oh no, we're closed for the night. Like, and it was early. And I was like, but it's dinner time for me. Like, in the US, we're now going out. And they're like, nope, you got to go to like a local bar or something. Everyone just hangs out. Like, it's not a thing. So it's like, oh, okay.
Totally. And I think our preoccupation of, even when we're not producing, when we're not working, we are stimulated and we're working up here. We got to get to a point of where somebody's like, this is freaking crazy, man. I mean, we're burning out like it's our job. We're causing anxiety, mental illness, depression, stress, worry, autoimmune diseases being catalyzed by stress and overtaxation, overstimulation to a gross degree. This is not how human creatures, our creature finitude was never geared to do this. This is madness. Yeah. How much information, inundation, stimulation, all of this. And then the economy, let's just talk about the practicum. You need a lot of money to live. So you got to work. You got to work. And if you're in Maryland, whoa, hey, you're better suited for Nebraska. All of us. I mean, this is crazy. Yeah. So when it comes to Sabbath, when you tell people cease, they don't even know what you're talking about. Like, are you smoking coke? Cease. They can't even turn off. Huh. So the why has to be substantial enough to move the what. That's where I think when I say people can't get out of their own way, the why has to be glorious enough, beautiful enough, majestic enough. You can't browbeat a culture that is almost stuck on Mach 4. Stop.
Yeah.
Stop.
Stall the plane in the middle of the air.
Exactly. Turn your motors off. No, it's almost you're on autopilot. So the why has to be like, whoa, that's incredible. So you got to start. This is why when people campaign for Sabbath and really not just propose it, but almost sort of they preach it, it sometimes it's neglectful of the beauty of it. So you got to start with creature finitude. We're so frail, Boots. We're so frail. I mean, aren't we?
Yeah.
I mean, I wake up, and I can wake up bright-eyed, bushy-tailed at 6:30 a.m. Man, see right, feel right, think right. Man, if I get the least little bit curveball, I am whacked out by 10:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
And so I'm in my head and I'm trying to, and I'm thinking, you know what? It's all going to.
Let's try again tomorrow.
Can I get back under the covers? I want a space heater and a pillow. You know, I don't want to do it anymore. We're so weak in constitution. So you got to start with creature finitude. You got to start with, I'm reading a wonderful book. It's called You're Only Human. But it speaks really to our frailty. Mm-hmm. And I love that. I hate people telling me I'm stronger than I am. I really think we need to be reminded that we're all being held together by the power of his word and that we're but dust. That sets everything to balance. Second to that, he is the giver of life. He's the wellspring of life. So when he sets a precept, he's going, I want to help you.
Yeah, it's for your good.
I want to help you. Sometimes I think one of the probably in recent where I felt like God spoke to me the most, or spoke to me the clearest. My dog, I've told you about him, old Sawyer, soy dog. Yeah. Old Soy tore his ACL.
Aww.
Yeah. This was a while ago. All right. Long story short, we let nature take its course. Oh my God. And hey, he's good. We took him to the vet. They said, listen, we think the tear isn't so substantial that if you nurse him right, you can forego surgery. I was like, game on. Because it was either that or put him down. All right.
Oh my gosh.
So anyway, we took him home. And so
got him some foam rollers.
Got him, put his big rear end on it, worked him back and forth. And so anytime we let him out, You know, there's deer in the backyard. We back up against the bike trail, but there's some deer that cross over our backyard. If he smells them, and got a big old buck back there. I name him Bert. Bert. He likes to just hang out. He'll say hi every now and again. He's an ignorant neighbor, but sometimes we'll see him out there. You let Sawyer catch wind of Bert, it's lights out. So we got to walk him outside on a leash, or had to. This one time, when he would walk from the sofa, you know, the only thing Sawyer does all day long is just switch sofas.
Really good at Sabbath.
Yeah, hey, he's real good at ceasing until he catches wind of Bert.
Yeah.
So we let him outside, and old Soy, even with his sore leg, I watched him walk from living room into the sunroom. And I thought, oh, buddy, I'm so sorry. I'd sit there and talk to him, encourage him, preach to him a little bit. He caught wind of Bert and took off. I mean, full throttle. Mm-hmm. And I was watching him run, and I was standing in my driveway. I was watching him run, and it was aching my heart. True story. Before I sound so insensitive, Sawyer's one of my favorite kids. He took off. My heart, it hurt. It hurt because I knew your adrenaline that you're operating with right now, you're going to pay for it in a minute. While he was plowing through that field, and I just felt like God said, that's how I see you, friend.
Wow.
That sometimes you're so convinced, I don't need to stop and rest, and I don't need to slow down and reflect. And you get neglectful of where your help comes from. You run, actually thinking, I'll catch that deer. Sawyer can't get within 100 yards of that deer. I mean, hauling. And that deer is like, oh, Bert's like, you're dumb. Just dancing.
Yeah.
Just dance, a little tail
good.
up, graceful.
It's a good deer.
You see that little deer?
Yeah.
That's us. Mm-hmm. That's us. And so I think when you understand creature finitude, how frail we are, and then that paired with how good God is, and that really, if we adopt his rhythm, it infuses life into us. It doesn't take life from us. And I think that's a lot of the way people think about Sabbath.
Yeah.
This is going to cost me more than it's going to gain me.
Yeah.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, this isn't going to cost you. This is what I've given to sustain you.
Come
like
on, man.
The image of Sawyer hauling it with a torn ACL, like that helps nail the image home for me. I think of like what it's designed to do, what it's designed to protect and to sustain. That's helpful.
Amen.
So, thank you, sir.
Thank you, buddy.
And thank you for listening to this episode, watching us.
And Sawyer's healthy now. Just want everybody to know. Legs are solid. He's strong as an ox.
We should share a picture of Sawyer on Simplexity.
Totally. I got a black and white one.
Got a good one.
Oh, yeah, I got
Nice.
a good one.
Okay. See you guys.
Love you guys.